Hello there, and thanks for joining me. I'm Corel Painter Master Aaron Rutten, and in this video, I'll show you how to reset your workspace to update it for a new version of Corel Painter. So Corel Painter 2018 is out now, and if I want to convert my Corel Painter 2017 workspace to Corel Painter 2018, I need to follow a particular process. So I have Corel Painter 2018 open here, and this is my first time opening it, so I'm going to start by going to Window, Workspace, Import Workspace. I'm going to select my Corel Painter 2017 workspace, and I'll click on Open. Now, more than likely, it's going to say this legacy workspace may contain features that cannot be imported. Only libraries and custom palettes are preserved. So what this is saying is it's going to bring in some of the content, but not all of it, and it might not look the same. So we'll click on OK. After importing our legacy workspace, the next thing we want to do is go ahead and reset the workspace to clear out any potential bugs or any problems you might have working with that workspace in Corel Painter 2018. So to do that, we'll go ahead and close out of Corel Painter, and we'll hold Shift on our keyboard, double-click on the Painter icon, and that brings up the Factory Reset dialog. Now we have a couple of main options here. We can keep some customizations, and we can choose which customizations we're going to keep, such as all brushes, all other libraries, such as papers, patterns, scripts, etc., and custom palettes. All other customizations, such as palette arrangement, preferences, and presets, will be lost. Or we can choose Restore All Settings to Factory Defaults. Let's start with Keep Some Customizations, because that's going to be less content that we have to import. We'll go ahead and keep all three of these boxes checked here so we keep all of this content. And then we can reset all workspaces, or we can reset the current workspace. Now what this is going to do is this is going to reset Corel Painter to its factory defaults while maintaining some of the customization you've created in your workspace. So if there are any bugs present, hopefully those will be removed by doing this. Now we only need to reset the current workspace, so we'll go ahead and click on that. So it's gone ahead and brought in the workspace, but the first thing I notice is that it's stacked all of my custom palettes conveniently in the top left of the screen. And in fact, the little bar where you grab the palette is off the screen, and it's on my other monitor, which is above this monitor. You can't see it, but I have to actually use my mouse rather than my Wacom pen because my Wacom pen won't work on that screen. So I have to drag all of these one by one over so that we can see them. Okay, so now that I can see all of my palettes, I'm going to have to arrange them on the screen the same way that I had them. So if I need to open up Corel Painter 2017 and look at that workspace or do a screen capture of it, I can go ahead and do that. But I've done this so many times, I already have the order memorized. Some of these palettes may need to be extended by dragging the three dots on the bottom of the palette. You might not even be able to see those three dots, so you have to hover right in the exact spot to be able to get it. Some of the palettes might need to be extended horizontally as well, like this one, for instance. So you have to know your palettes well if you made custom palettes. Otherwise, some content might be hidden from view. Now this one we don't need open. I'll go ahead and close that. And there's also some palettes that are missing. For example, I need to go to Palette Drawers, open Papers, so that I can make Papers a custom palette drawer. And in fact, I think I'll just take Rendering and Blenders and move it into there. And I'll go ahead and name this Custom AR. This will be my custom palette drawer. I'll keep grain there since we're going to be able to use the random grain properties now. These particle brushes can go together. Shortcuts go up at the top. There may be things that I want to get rid of, like the mixer I don't use. Now, before you spend too much time getting this arranged the way you like it, because it's going to take quite a bit of time to do that, you may want to test and make sure that your workspace isn't corrupted. Because sometimes when you import a legacy workspace, you bring in bugs from a previous version or it just doesn't work. And so don't waste your time setting everything up until you're pretty sure that that workspace is going to work without crashing. A good way to test that is to select a brush and just drag a brush by holding Shift and release it on your workspace. And if Painter doesn't crash, that's good. Then try it again by dragging a brush into a custom palette. If it still doesn't crash, you're on the right track. And then you can finish arranging your workspace to get it looking the way you want. I'm going to bring in some more panels. I'm going to bring in media library panels, nozzles. This image hose palette I don't use, but I do use the nozzle libraries. I'll rename this custom palette drawer image hose and particles. I also want to bring in my flow maps, so I'm going to locate that in the palette drawer flow maps. And we want to go ahead and take that and put it over here with our papers. I'm just double clicking on the little tab name here to go ahead and collapse that. Now over here on the right, I like my color palette to be docked, so I'm going to drag that out. I'm going to dock it there by dragging until I get that blue line and then letting go. And now it stays docked with the window. Color set libraries I like to have open, as well as color variability and color expression. And I like to have layers in there as well. I don't use channels. You may have to change some of the icon sizes. For example, I could go to color set library view and I can make that bigger or smaller. Kind of like it at that size. You can also make the color picker bigger or smaller. You may also want to go to edit preferences and just check and make sure the preferences are the way you want them. They usually get reset. So for example, I like single document view. You may want to set your performance settings. My scratch drive is actually E. I like my undo levels at 9. So I'm not going to spend too much time arranging this. This gives you the basic idea of what I have to do to get this workspace looking how it was in Corel Painter 2017. There's still a few more palettes to add, but I'll go ahead and skip over those. Because occasionally, as I mentioned earlier, your workspace can get corrupted and you might not even get this far. When I tried to drag a brush from the brush selector onto my workspace here, Corel Painter crashed, and it's going to do that every time I try to add a brush. So you can't add anything to your custom workspace. And if that's the case, then anytime you import your Corel Painter 2017 workspace, Corel Painter 2018 is always going to be corrupted when you save a new workspace. So the only thing that you can do is completely reset Corel Painter 2018 to its factory defaults. So I'll close out. I'm going to hold Shift before I click on the Corel Painter icon to launch it, and then double click. And I want to restore all settings to factory defaults, and I want to reset all workspaces. And then unfortunately, this is a bit more tedious. You not only have to bring in all of your palettes that are missing, but you have to bring in all of your custom content as well. Now, I've done my best to streamline this process, so I've done things a certain way to make it much easier. For example, I'm going to go to Window, Custom Palette, Organizer. I'm going to go to Import. And from Corel Painter 2018 on, I've decided to, rather than create a brush category, I've now created custom box files for each of my brush palettes. So I'll bring in Rendering and all of my other palettes here. Now that I'm done importing, I'll go to Done. And then just like last time, I have to drag using my mouse because these palettes for some reason show up off screen. I recommend saving your progress as you go along as well by going to Workspace, Export Workspace, and just make sure that you don't save over your original workspace. I want to back up a little bit and discuss the custom box palettes and why these are important. The reason why I changed over from one big brush category to a bunch of individual ones is for two different reasons. One is it makes it easier to find particular brushes. You don't have one long run-on list, so you can look through smaller lists much more easily. It is longer and takes up more room in the brush selector, but that's kind of a trade-off. The other reason is that by exporting them and importing them as a box file, you're going to maintain all the linkage between the brush library and the brush category, and the brush icon and its position in the custom palette. Whereas if you save your brushes as one big brush category, there's going to be no linkage between your palettes. And if all of your brushes are located in an older library, such as 2017, then it's going to get a little confusing for people who want to find your brushes. And this happened to me, and so I made this change out of necessity because I didn't want to re-import each brush individually and add the icon individually for all of these brushes. And I don't want to have to do that each year. So this shaves off a few steps and makes it a lot faster. So as I mentioned, it's good to save your progress as you go along, but you may want to test just to make sure your workspace isn't still corrupted before you get too far, because as you saw earlier, arranging this stuff takes a lot of time and you don't want to do it more than once. So I'll go ahead and just test and make sure I can add a brush, and I can drag it here and everything is fine. So I'll go ahead and finish arranging this now. Now, one tip is if you want to make the color picker bigger before you dock it, that is to say if you want to make it wider and taller before you dock it, because once it's docked, then it's kind of stuck there. You'll notice that when I reset everything, color set libraries got reset, so I need to go ahead and reload that custom content. I'll go to Import Color Set. Here's my value scale color set. The swatches are way too small, so I'm going to click on this top right sub-dialog icon. I'm going to change the view to large. And I don't want to see the rainbow colored color set there, so I'm going to go to Color Set Libraries and just check that off. Make that smaller. I want my color picker to be HSV, not RGB. My layers palette, I want to customize that and do no thumbnail. I'm going to get my media library panel nozzles. And these are just the default libraries, so I need to reset that. Let's go to Import Nozzle Library. And it's very important to organize all of these files. I have all my nozzles in a nozzles folder, which is in the workspace for that particular version of Painter. So everything is organized in folders. That's really important. Otherwise, you're going to have to wade through these files. So I'll go ahead and load these in the order I want them to appear. I want nature to be first. I want to go to Nozzle Libraries and just get rid of the default Painter nozzle libraries. I'll import the remaining libraries. I'm going to make the icon larger as well and expand it so I can see it 3 by 3. I need to go to my paper libraries and load some content there. I'm going to load my organismal paper textures. Now we can see they appear down there at the bottom. I need to bring in my flow map panel. And I'm arranging this the way that I like it, but you can feel free to arrange things the way that you like it. Now I'm going to go to palette drawers, texture painting. I'm going to call this glazing, dab, stencil, and texture. I want to add glazing to that, so I'll go to brush control panels, glazing. I'm going to bring in a few more panels, so I'm going to go to window, brush control panels, and then stroke attributes. I'm going to put that right above color variability. Let's go to window, composition panels, layout grid. I'll move that next to layers, along with divine proportion. And again, you want to make sure that your preferences are the way that you want them. Another thing you might have to reset is under File New. If you created any canvas presets, those will be gone, so you'll need to recreate those. For example, I have an 8x10 preset, and you'll want to do these in the order you want them to appear. We'll do 300 for the resolution. We'll click on plus, 10x8 at 300. And now we have our preset. Do 11x14 at 300 and add that as a preset. And again, if you can't remember what you had as presets, you can always open your older version of Painter and look at your workspace and go back and forth and make sure that you got all of the customization copied over. Once you've finished customizing your workspace, you can go to Window, Workspace, Export Workspace, and all of your customization will be saved. And just remember that each time you change your workspace or add to it, go ahead and export it again, give it a different file name, and that way you'll have lots of backups of your workspace. In case one gets corrupted, you can always go back to an older one without having to rebuild all this stuff, because as you saw, if you have to do it over and over and over again, it takes up a lot of your time. That's time you should be spending painting. And so here's a look at my fully converted, customized workspace. Still a bit of a work in progress. I still have a couple of experimental brushes that I need to add icons for. You notice there's a few new things, like I have a new thick paint button here that I created with a custom icon, and there's a new thick paint brush palette here. And again, these are custom box files, and when they import, they come in as their own individual categories, which are automatically linked to the palette and the icons. So there's my thick paint category. Now these are all custom icons that I added, and these are all custom icons as well. So again, those were extra steps that I'd have to do before. I'd have to change all the icons. Now all that stuff's going to remain linked. And when Corel Painter 2019 or whatever the next version of it is comes out, and I have to rebuild my workspace, all I need to do is simply go to Window, Custom Palette, Organizer, and I can just export each of these as a box file. And just as you saw me do earlier, I can re-import them, and I will maintain all of that linkage, and all my brushes will go into the current library. Before we go, I think it might be helpful just to take a look at how I organize these files as well. I have a Workspace folder and a Presets folder within that, and these are going to be all of my different workspaces. So for example, let's take a look at the 2017 workspace. I have all of my workspace files, so I have a bunch of different versions. That way, when I'm working on it or making changes to it, I always have an older version to go back to. I have some different assets like custom papers, keyboard shortcuts, installation instructions, but then I have a folder for nozzles. And within that folder for nozzles, I have links to all my original files, but I also have my nozzle libraries here that I can import. If we go to box files, I have all of my box files here. If we go to brushes, I have all my brushes, and they're all sorted by category and folders. So here's all of my blenders. If I go to flow maps, you can see I have some custom flow maps. And so all of my content is sorted. That way, when I need to re-import it later, or if I just want to be able to keep track of it, I know exactly where it is. And this is especially important for people who share their workspaces and files. It's absolutely essential that you're organized. So there you go. I hope that helped you convert your old Corel Painter workspace to the newer version. Now, of course, I did this with Corel Painter 2017 to Corel Painter 2018. But this information is going to apply to other versions of workspaces as well. If you found this information helpful, take a quick second to like this video. And if you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. I have a lot more Corel Painter tutorials like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.